What's up, everybody? Jeff Cooper here. Welcome back to Blue Collar Heathen on YouTube. Today, I want to talk about hell because I've had so many people tell me in the last week that I'm going there. So let's get this done. Without hell, Christianity falls apart. It is an essential element of the religion. I think of it like the hub on a wheel. That the inboard bearing may be heaven, the outboard bearing is hell. And if either one of the bearings go out, the wheel ain't going to turn. So Christianity really becomes meaningless without hell. It's an essential element to the religion. It requires hell as much as it does a literal Adam and Eve. And their trespass in the garden, and the fall of man, original sin, and then the birth and death of their Christ character, his resurrection and ascension. Because that's what Christianity is supposed to be saving us from. So when you profess disbelief in, or worse, demonstrate the impossibility of any of those essential elements of Christianity, of course you're going to get a significant pushback from them. Because to them, these things must be true. They have to be, otherwise it's all useless. And that's why I believe that so many of them reject evolution by natural selection, because that negates the literal Adam and Eve that they require, and if they weren't specially created, then Jesus died for nothing. And that can be very difficult for a Christian to fathom, that they could be that wrong. You see, to them, Christianity shapes their worldview, and they think that that's where they get their morals from, and that's where they get their good nature and their appreciation of beauty and of aesthetics and everything. They think that all comes from their religion. Those poor bastards. Nonetheless, they will tell you sometimes that they'll tell an atheist or somebody else sometimes that they're going to hell. They don't see it as a threat. They see it as like an assessment of the situation, because they truly do believe that sin exists. But it most certainly is one. It's intimidation. It's manipulation. What they're essentially saying is do as I command, or my God, my deity, my personal Lord and Savior. You have to say it like it has like that extra U, like spelt like a Brit. Is going to condemn you to an eternal lake of fire, where there will be eternal torment and punishment and gnashing of teeth and wailing. He's going to torture you forever and ever and ever and ever. Oogie boogie. Now my stock response to someone telling me that has changed over the years. I've mellowed out maybe. Put on a few years. Put on a few pounds. Alright, a couple. And, maybe I have. Maybe I've mellowed out in my old age. But my response used to be 2 words. The second was always off, or possibly you, depending on my mood. The first, that always remained the same. But lately, the last few years or so, I've changed it to this. For your threat to have any merit, you'd have to show that consciousness survives after death, that souls or spirits are a thing, Number 2, you'd have to show that hell is a real place. And number 3, you'd have to show that gods are a thing and that your understanding of them is correct. I've become particularly cognizant in the order in which I say those things over the last few years. I used to lead with the God thing, but now I do the soul thing because that lets you know what kind of Christian that you're dealing with. And if you go straight to the big guns, the conversation's not going to go anywhere. So I lead with the soul. And I found that often when I do that, that when people that would tell you to go to hell, when they hear you say that you're not worried about your soul, that you don't think such a thing exists, that you have no reason to think that they're real, they're dumbfounded. They don't know how to act. They often struggle to wrap their heads around the concept of someone existing and living life without a soul belief. Now be prepared, because it's likely that you're going to be interrogated, or they'll try to, on moralistic or emotional or even aesthetic grounds, because rather than acknowledging that everybody has those things, they interpret those things as some type of supernatural woo-woo type of shit and assign it to the influence or presence of a soul, rather than recognizing that they're just part of the human condition. But try not to get too bogged down in that interrogation. Just recognize that it's most likely coming. When it comes down to it, they're the one that's saying souls are real. It's up to them to prove it. And if they can't, not your problem. Just tell them. Show me the worth of your claim, or don't be surprised when I consider it worthless. Because when it comes down to it, if there's no consciousness surviving after death, and they can't demonstrate that that's the case, then there's nothing for their God to send to hell, even if both of those exist. So you don't have to worry about hell. When you ask them to show that hell is a real place, they tend to get very upset. And I find that absolutely fascinating. I do. I think it's amazing that these people will get really upset about that, because they want hell to be real. They want the people that they've condemned there in their own heads, they want them sent into that lake of fire, and they want the gnashing and the wailing and this crying and the vile torture to go on for centuries. They want these things to be true. They've taken so much comfort over the years in sending so many people there, that to take that away from them, that to extinguish that lake of fire, they grieve for that. They grieve at the thought of the lake of fire being extinguished, because then that removes the righteous indignation that they had. It's saying that they were wrong. And if they're wrong, well, then nobody's going to hell. Not just you, but everybody that they've condemned there is not going. And they will never have the opportunity to watch that soul, which they can't show exists, writhing forever in pain. They will never get to see their enemies driven before them and hear the lamentations of their women. Forgive me the Robert E. Howard reference. I mean, it was right there. I couldn't help it. But see, the thing is, if you don't think that their hell is real, and you have no reason to think that their hell is real, and they can't demonstrate a reason for you to think that their hell is real, then it kind of loses all of its teeth. It has no power left. And it can't be used as a method of intimidation or manipulation, or as a big stick to threaten you with. That's their biggest weapon. And they rely upon you to give it to them. You deny them that. And they're quite powerless. So, unless they have demonstrated criteria number 1, that souls or spirits exist and consciousness survives after death to your satisfaction, then it comes incumbent upon them to show that hell is a literal, real place. That they are going to need to show the GPS coordinates or where it is in the cosmos. They're going to have to open it up for investigation. Maybe send Rand McNally in there and we can have an atlas on it. You know, just file it right next to the North Dakota one or something. But that's what would have to happen, because otherwise it's indistinguishable from fantasy. And yeah, it's this weird Christian fantasy that's kind of body horror, kind of torture porn, like straight out of an Edward Lee novella. But that's pretty much it. It becomes an interesting place to explore in fiction and film, and as it can't be shown to exist, you don't need to concern yourself with it. Now, criteria 3. That gods exist and their understanding of them is correct is the most difficult for the atheist to sit through and for the theist to counter. Because even if they get through a logical proof of a god, that does not manifest it. It doesn't become manifest upon, making it through a logical proof. That just means that this is a possible entity. Does that exist? Can we show that that possible entity, with the criteria outlined by that proof, does that exist? So you'd have to find all of the prospective entities, check their attributes, and see how it lines up. Unfortunately, that would actually take the scientific discovery of gods, which, to the very best of my knowledge, has never happened. So, you really don't need to worry about hell. And Christians, if you're going to keep telling people that they're going to go there, you guys might want to think on this. Because whoever you're saying that to, I guarantee you, it's not the first time that they've heard it. And while it might make you feel like you're morally superior in that moment, unless you can demonstrate those 3 criteria, you really got nothing. You'd better direct the conversation to something more meaningful. Anyways, that's all we got for this time. Thank you so much for sticking around. This is the part of the episode where you do the YouTube-y thingy. So, the liking, the sharing, the subscribing, the clicking of the bell, the getting of the notifications. Do want you to leave a comment down below, particularly if you have another way of dealing with Christians that tell you that you're going to hell. I mean, do you just use a 2-word response? Hell is one of those things that, many Christians lord over atheists, and that many atheists kind of hold on to. They kind of have this residual fear of, even after their deconversion. And if so, I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear, how does that affect your life? And what, if anything, have you done to be able to come to terms with it? Anyways, I'm Jeff Cooper. This is Blue Collar Heathen. Let's have a conversation about that down below. And we'll see you next time. You take it easy.